began to make notes about the animals that had been discovered during the expedition, and then to trace the voyage on a very large map, and then to scrutinize the species lists for each station, and by then it was too late. At some point it became easier to write the book than not. But why are the animals so important? Well, I suppose that for convenience, you might recognize three kinds of animal. There are those you can see, on land and in shallow water. There are those you can't see because they are too small, and then there are those you can't see because they are hidden from sight in deep water. The first kind is familiar to us all. The second kind was discovered by the early microscopists, and the third kind was discovered by the Challenger expedition. Most of the species captured from the deep sea during the expedition had never been seen before, either by scientists or by anyone else. The expedition did not merely lengthen the catalog of living animals, but, much more than that, added a whole new volume to accommodate the hidden fauna of half the world. There are people on the stage, too, of course, especially the scientists on board. Their leader was the portly and somewhat pompous Charles Wyville Thomson, accompanied by Henry Moseley, who always seems a little raffish, the saturnine chemist John Young Buchanan, and the earnest student Rudolf von Willemoes-Suhm, who was drafted more or less by accident. John Murray belongs in a separate sentence, as the ablest of them, the deepest thinker, the hardest worker, and the only one of them to turn a profit from the voyage. Then there were the officers, the two captains, George Norris and Frank Thompson, John McClure and Tom Tizard, who did most of the navigating, the aristocratic Lieutenant Lord George Campbell, who left the raciest account of the voyage, his junior, Herbert Swire, who left the grumpiest account, but unfortunately Bowdlerized it at the last minute, and all the others needed to work a naval ship. There were also 200 or so anonymous seamen in the background, which is where they stay, as usual, with the peculiar exception of Assistant Steward Henry Matkin, whose letters home have survived and give us a rare glimpse of life on the lower deck. The voyage itself is the thread on which the animals are strung as we pass from station to station across the oceans for nearly 80,000 miles. I have given short shrift to the visits on shore, which can be learned about in other books, but to spare the listener, I have also omitted a lot of technical stuff about currents and sediments that seem to me less than gripping. What remains is the animals themselves, including the ugliest fish in the world, flesh-eating clams, dwarf males, sea devils, and an octopus that wears lipstick. I hope that you will be as fascinated by these strange creatures of the deep sea as I have been, as we follow HMS Challenger on her long and complicated voyage around the world. Part 1. Before. 1. The Deep Sea. Mudskippers are small, pop-eyed fish that hop around on beaches in the tropics, foraging for anything that crawls just above the high tide mark. They are on the land, but not of the land, so to speak. Tourists rather than residents, who can venture no further than the mangrove roots. We are mudskippers in reverse, familiar enough with the bright rim of the sea and occasionally venturing a little further with mask and snorkel, but unable to leave the shore without the sort of technology that mudskippers lack. Even with our best technology, however, we are no more than tourists on an extended visit. The mudskipper sees the beach and the fringe of the forest, but cannot imagine mountain, desert, and river. We see the shore and the reef without realizing that a mile or two beyond lies a very different place, in which none of the rules by which we are accustomed to live our lives hold anymore. If you could walk directly into the sea, through the surf and away from the land, you would be likely to descend a gentle slope for 2 or 3 days. The water over your head would gradually become deeper until the surface was about 200 meters above, say 2 average city blocks away. About this time, the gradient would begin to increase, and soon you were walking quite steeply downhill, with the surface rapidly receding. The sediment beneath your feet would thicken as you approach the edge of the continent, where the soil and debris washed from the land eventually accumulates. At the end of a long day's walk, the gradient eases and you stride out onto a prairie that stretches away into the far distance, flat and featureless, or sometimes with rolling hills or even studded with sudden, abrupt mountains.